That heavy, and I think through southern counties of England with the southerly breeze, they should tend to clear northwards as we head through the afternoon. For southwest England, if you look towards the Channel, you'll see some showers around. They'll edge in towards the evening. Across Wales, a largely fine, dry afternoon, but don't be shocked if you see one or two showers. There are some around. Now, as we head through the evening and overnight, showers push into the southwest, but for many, it turns clear and dry with light wind. It'll be actually quite misty and murky, particularly in the north. A mild night, temperatures 14 to 19 degrees in London. But tomorrow's weather dominated by low pressure sweeping in from the southwest, gathering warm air from the near-continent, isobars close together, showing not just wet through tomorrow, windy as well. The winds pick up first thing across the southwest of England and Wales, touching gale force. Then a spell of heavy rain will sweep through most areas through the day, arriving in Scotland much later in the evening. The rain will be heavy, an inch or two will fall in just 4, 5 or 6 hours. That could. Tomorrow's record for the Northern Isles, still breezy. By Thursday, we're back to sunshine and showers, but lurking to the southwest is our next spell of wet weather. This moves in across the southwest of England, Wales, and to Northern Ireland Thursday night into Friday. So by Friday, again, still looking fairly wet. Mostly across western areas, the southeast should be largely dry. And despite the wind and the rain this week, it actually will be pretty mild.
Laura, thank you very much. At 1:30, a reminder of our top story. There are to be price hikes for rail commuters in England and Scotland after a rise in inflation. The government insists the money will pay for improvements, but there's been anger from commuters. That's all from the news at 1 this lunchtime, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are.
The headlines on Reporting Scotland this Tuesday lunchtime. Rail fares are set to rise by more than 4%, but it's less than the hike facing passengers south of the border. The murder of this man in Lanarkshire 14 years ago. Police staged a reconstruction in the street where he was stabbed to death.
It's just like riding a bike, it's all about balance, and fairly soon you can do it without even thinking.
And no need for pedal power in Scotland's latest craze, off-road Segway trekking. Good afternoon. Rail passengers in Scotland are facing potential price rises of more than 4%, but it's less than the increase that passengers south of the border will have to pay. It's all because the rate of inflation rose far more than expected. Here's our transport correspondent, David Miller.
Question which politics...
I'm sorry we don't have that report at the moment. The wife of the man accused of murdering Croucher pensioner Jenny Methven has been giving evidence at his trial. Mary Keane told the court the day that Jenny Methven was found dead in her Fertiliat home, it had been a typical day in the Keane household. She said when her husband Billy arrived home that day, he was normal, not up or down. William Keane denies murdering Jenny Methven at her home in February. The trial at the High Court in Glasgow continues. Police involved in the investigation into the unsolved murder of an Asian man in Lanarkshire 14 years ago have staged a reconstruction in the streets where he was killed. Last night they placed several cars on the street in Overton that date back to the time of the murder of Surjit Singh Choker. Our Home Affairs correspondent Riva Alderson reports.
A car, its number plates obscured, sits in a street in Wishaw. It's of a type which would have been far more common 14 years ago and would have been seen in this street. It was here in 1998 that Indian restaurant waiter Surjit Singh Choker was murdered, a crime which police are still investigating. Police brought the Ford here last night in an attempt to aid the investigation, which has recently been stepped up. It may also jog memories of possible witnesses. The family of the murdered waiter say they have every confidence that police and prosecutors will gather evidence to bring his killer to justice.
I don't particularly want to comment on what the police or the Crown Office are doing because that's a matter for them and I don't want to prejudice the live inquiry. However, as a matter of course in any murder, reconstructions take place and clearly nearly 14 years after the murder, people on that night will have seen what happened and it may jog their memory.
3 men, Ronnie Coulter from Wishaw, his nephew Andrew Coulter and David Montgomery of Motherwell, have already been tried and acquitted of Mr Chokar's murder after 2 separate trials in which they blamed each other. The handling of the original case led to a series of inquiries, and earlier this year the Crown Office announced it would be the first to be reinvestigated following the ending of double jeopardy rules preventing an accused person from being tried for the same offence twice. David Alderson reporting, Scotland.
Well, now back to that rise in rail fares. Here's David Miller.
Most ticket prices are on their way up again, and hard-pressed travellers could be forgiven for thinking the sky's the limit.
Huge amounts of money are being invested in Britain's railways. The question is, how much of the cash should come from government and how much should come from consumers? It's a question which politicians on both sides of the border have been wrestling with.
For UK services, of course, it's RPI plus 3%. What we've said is we won't allow them to increase by more than RPI plus 1%. But we've not said that all regulated fares will increase by that amount. What we've said is we'll look at certain cases where we think reducing fares will actually increase the patronage of rail services.
Fares between Scotland's biggest cities at the busiest times won't be affected by today's news, but passengers are unimpressed.
No value for money. Yeah, I don't think it's not. It's appalling, really, increasing the price that much.
Well, what we should do really is nationalise it again instead of all the private companies, you know, so they're just taking too much money out of it.
And campaigners are critical of the Scottish Government's role.
Well, I think it's a bad news story for Scotland. Fares are still going up 1% above inflation in Scotland, and on Anglo-Scottish journeys they're going up 3% above inflation. How does that fit with any government target to encourage more people to use public transport?
The price hike won't affect all passengers, but the message is clear. Improved services come at a cost, and it's the travelling public which will have to dig deep. David Miller reporting, Scotland, Edinburgh.
Now, it's been a fantastic Olympics for British female athletes, and on the back of gold medals from the likes of Heather Stanning and Catherine Granger, there are calls for more investment in women's sport. The Women's Sport and Fitness Foundation conducted a survey that showed Olympic athletes are better role models for girls than other celebrities. Lisa Summers reports.
It all began with Lizzie Armistead, the first medal of the Games. And then the first gold, Heather Stanning from Lossiemouth and her partner Helen Glover in the women's pairs. They said it would be the Women's Olympics, and it truly was. 22 medals for Team GB's women, 10 of them gold. Time to capitalise on the success of these games, say campaigners.
So there's a really strong sense that this is almost like a sort of turning point for women's sport, that we could actually give women's sport a step change in terms of its profile and its funding, which it desperately needs.
But back in the real world, with other things to do, will this Olympics really make a difference?
But we don't really have sportswomen who are sort of held up to us as role models or anything like that.
Well, not enough.
Really
they've only just started to do that, having had home games. But I think it should be done much more.
The reality is only 5% of the sport you see on television or in other media is women's sport, and only 0.5% of the commercial sponsorship goes to women. So is it any wonder that girls are not inspired? At the other end of the spectrum, coaches are working harder than ever to get girls involved.
Obviously, all coaches are always delighted to spot somebody, but it's getting them to the right place at the right time, and the parents being able to afford it, and equipment being available. There's a lot of things you have to think about.
The will is there, but will there be the infrastructure to support it, if the only way is up for women at the next Games? Lisa Summers reporting, Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, the Olympics may be over, but tonight we look back at the last 2 weeks in a special edition of Sport Nation on BBC Two Scotland. Here's Rona McLeod and John Beattie to tell us more.
The greatest show on earth has finally come to a close.
And Scottish success has been at the heart of this incredible Olympic experience.
Now there's been some disappointment, plenty of glory, but lots of tears.
And you can see it all on Sport Nation, a Scottish Olympic special, tonight, BBC Two Scotland, 7 p.m.
Tributes are being paid to the former MEP for Mid-Scotland and Fife, Alec Faulkner, who died on Sunday. He represented the area from 1984 to 1999. He'd been suffering from cancer. The former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, who was a close friend, said Alex spent his life working for the Labour and trade union movement. Scotland surveyors are reporting a summer dip in house sales and prices. The industry body says there were fewer would-be buyers in July, as well as a drop in the number of those looking to sell. Although there's an expectation sales will pick up after the holidays, many surveyors expect prices to continue to fall. The publishers of Britain's longest-running comic, The Dandy, have insisted no final decision has been taken on its future, following reports that it's facing closure. Launched in 1937, its circulation last year was only 8,000, making it less popular than The Beano, which is also published by Dundee-based DC Thomson. Now, they've been around for years, and President George W. Bush famously managed to fall off one. But now off-road trekking on segways seems to be becoming popular in Scotland, as Kevin Keane reports.
1 foot on, 2nd foot on, stand upright, okay?
A quick lesson followed by a practice session on the smooth grass. And then off on this family's first attempt at Segway trekking. The machines themselves have been around for more than a decade. But this off-road use for them, with specially designed tyres and frames, is relatively new and gaining in popularity.
It's a different kind of freedom. Everyone's did other outdoor activities, and this is something new for Aberdeen. And the hills we've got here, the different terrain, it just shows that the machine's off to the best ability and the skills that people have that they didn't realise they had and how to control things.
This specially designed course near Aberdeen gives riders a taste of all sorts of terrain, even this white-knuckle 45-degree drop down a sand dune.
Well, it's a bit of an odd sensation at first, but you fairly soon get the hang of it after about 10-15 minutes. It's just like riding a bike, it's all about balance, and fairly soon you can do it without even thinking.
Scotland now has
But what about the teeth of a gale and driving rain? Yes, it's time for the weather forecast from staff.
Hello there, good afternoon to you. We're already seeing showers developing across Scotland now. Some of them are going to turn out to be pretty heavy as the afternoon wears on. That said, though, there will be some decent sunny spells in between. And with the air being quite humid, it's going to feel quite pleasant out there. But some of these showers will be locally torrential, thunder and lightning mixed in too. But like I mentioned, where the sunshine comes out, we could see 22, maybe 23 Celsius. But a bit cooler across the Northern Isles, particularly for Shetland, which is holding on to the rather cloudy skies and also some outbreaks of rain. Those winds will be fairly light from a southerly direction. Now, as we go through this evening and overnight, we lose the showers from the bulk of the mainland. It stays rather damp and wet across Shetland. We'll also start to see some low cloud and mist rolling from the east, affecting mainly the eastern side of the country, but some of that will get through the central belt. But wherever you are, a mild night with lows of around 12 or 13 degrees. Now, so all eyes on this very deep, active area of low pressure, which will be spreading up from the south during the course of Wednesday, not really affecting Scotland until later on Wednesday. So to start Wednesday, it's not looking too bad. We will have some low cloud and mist, which will burn back away towards the east coast. Some spots of drizzle here. With an onshore breeze, it will feel cooler. But with some shelter out to the west and some sunshine, it's going to feel particularly warm, maybe 25 Celsius for the likes of Ullapool. But across the south, it'll turn much wetter, winds picking up from the east too. And it's a very wet night. That rain eventually locates itself towards the Northern Isles by Thursday. Further south, the bulk of the country, a little bit cooler with a mixture of sunshine and showers. So it's set to stay pretty unsettled through the week.
And that's all from us for now. Join me for the main edition of Reporting Scotland. That's at 6:30. Until then, from everyone on the Lunchtime team, for now, have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Cherry is addicted to love and Jimmy's getting sick of it. Doctors next on BBC One Scotland.
Sharon's
bag. EastEnders, this week on BBC One.
Scotland take on Australia at Easter Road in preparation.